Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike LaCusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. Have you checked out the Collector vs. Investor series that I just put a wrap on last week? And we had a blast discussing some debate prompts on the topic, and I'll be the first to admit they were very biased towards the collector mindset. And Paul Hickey, my friend, was brave enough to be the only participant who identifies as an investor flipper. And recently, Paul, in the last few weeks, has been hosting some of his network and community on his show, the Sports Card Strategy Show, on the topic of 2024 New Year's resolutions for the hobby. And inspired by that, and also inspired by the fact that the collector mindset was outweighing the investor mindset on that series, I am going to be taking some clips of a few of his guests who are sharing their 2024 goals from the investor's perspective. And we're going to share them today as we discuss 2024 New Year's resolutions. I'll be sprinkling in my own resolutions between these clips, and I'm hoping that we can find some common ground. They will certainly share some goals and some practices that I don't agree with, but what I learned in the last series is that it's not that I disagree with it fundamentally, it's that flipping and selling and focusing on profit isn't what I want in my hobby experience. But I'm sure some of you might disagree with me. But first, holy smokes, the weather has been insane here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Some of you may have noticed my stories on Instagram, but we hit temperatures well below sub-zero. And I'm talking, my mind is in Celsius, but I'll try and talk in Fahrenheit. But we're talking like minus 40 type range for a blanket temperature across the city. But the worst part was these spots, little spot frigid temperatures with freezing mist in the air that reached as low as minus 52 with a wind chill factor of minus 62. And that's in Fahrenheit. No golf yet. A few more months for this cold to pass. The fun thing about Calgary in particular is that due to the geography of where we are, positioned against the Rocky Mountains, we actually get something called a Chinook several times per winter. Basically, the Chinook is a warm wind that will come in and rise temperatures from the minus 20s up to the plus 10 kind of range. And that's in Celsius. So, what is that in Fahrenheit? Like 0 degrees up to 60 degrees. Plus 60 degrees swing in temperature Fahrenheit. So I'm sure you can imagine what kind of pressure changes come with that. People literally get headaches when this kind of thing happens. So we went from last week minus 62 Fahrenheit to right now at like plus 45, plus 50. So, all right, let's get into the New Year's resolutions. And first, I'm just going to give a quick recap of 2023 and what we left behind us in the hobby. Looking back at 2023 was a mixed bag. I had less time to enjoy the hobby because of family. My wife was pregnant and we had a baby for the second half of the year, as well as our own toddler in the mix. I had less time to enjoy the hobby, and yet I actually invested more of my time in the hobby. I made lots of poor purchasing decisions late at night or just being impulsive in the moment, but I also made some amazing pickups. Just flipping through some of my eBay purchases for inspiration, I fully dedicated myself to the Goodwin Champions Cosmic Parallel. I overextended myself buying way too many shiny golf cards like the Chameleon Parallels, the Purple Pulsars, the Ultra Lucky Gold from Asia Parallel. I bought some PMGs, the Retro Precious Metal Gems versions of basically every golfer I could find except Tiger Woods because his are too expensive. And I'm very happy with those, although I may have been a bit silly to buy duplicates and triplicates in some cases. I think Matthew Wolff, I have 4 or 5 of his red PMGs. I completed my Matthew Wolff Rainbow, by the way, which is one of my best accomplishments in the hobby. I started a new hockey collection of O-Pee-Chee Platinum Seismic Gold parallels of the Arizona Coyotes, as well as a couple select players from the past that I really love, Shane Doan, Mike Smith, and I started a Clayton Keller PC. Clayton Keller is, of course, the most talented player for the Arizona Coyotes. I bought a whole bunch of cool cards of his, like Platinum Green Wave, numbered out of 10, his rookie Upper Deck Employee exclusive PMG, a rookie autograph from Platinum on card out of 50, just to name a few. I completed the Retro Star Rubies Golfer subset from 2021 Upper Deck Metal Universe Champions. Actually, that's not Upper Deck Metal Universe Champions. That's Fleer Metal Universe Champions. Anyways, Upper Deck owns Fleer. I bought some sweet Matthew Wolff cards. I made some bulk purchases from sellers on eBay where there was a card that really drew my attraction, and I just tagged on 1 or 2 extra cards for not having to pay shipping. And some of those I regret. Some of them are pretty dang cool. But it's amounted to quite a surplus of these lower end golf cards mostly. I bid on a 2008 Topps Chrome Sean Williams card. I don't even know who the hell Sean Williams is. The reason I bid on this card is that I thought it was a superfractor. And I put a bid of like $26 thinking, oh, I'll buy a superfractor for my favorite basketball set. And, I'm willing to pay $26 just to own a superfractor. And it turns out I was just glazy-eyed and not paying attention, and it was actually an X-fractor, not a superfractor. Of course, a superfractor is serial numbered 1 of 1, and an X-fractor is out of 288. So, of course, the seller immediately accepted my offer. And I messaged him and said, hey, I don't want to be one of those guys. I'm going to follow through with the purchase if you want me to, but I made this mistake. And this is, a $1 card, not a $26 card. And the dude was pretty cool about it, actually. And he ended up dropping it down to like $5 instead of $26. So, what else did I do in 2023? Picked up couple oddball UFC cards like the 2011 UFC George St. Pierre Atomic Refractor die cut. A bunch of really sweet Steve Nash cards, but I also sold some really sweet Steve Nash cards. I sold a 1 of 1 Abraham Answer that basically looks like a superfractor, and then I bought one back that's the exact same version except it's a red 1 of 1. I completed my Diamond Relic set and almost got duplicates for every Diamond Relic. I got my Tiger Woods Diamond Relic as a PSA 10 Pop 1. And I'm looking back and I'm only at November. A couple of those things I just shared off the top of my head. But based on spouting off for 5 minutes from a whole whack of purchases, pickups, trades, and that's literally only back to mid-November of last year. That just goes to show that, holy, I had one heck of a year. My first New Year's resolution for 2024 is about my hobby attitude. And in Paul Hickey's words, to stop judging others in how they participate in the hobby. Thank you again to all the guys that participated in the Collector versus Investor series. And in part 4, we talked about whether or not people should collect a player they love, or if it's okay for them to diversify their collection. And it really opened my eyes with responses from even collectors and not just investor flippers who sided against this prompt. Because it's okay to collect complete sets, or it's okay to buy a card impulsively that you might not love. But we shouldn't judge how others participate, and we shouldn't take this hobby too seriously. It's sports cards. They're trading cards. It's a hobby. Spending time in the hobby is the same, in my opinion, as my time playing basketball or board games with friends, or even just shooting the shit with my family over a beer in the backyard at a barbecue. Like, that is the feeling that I want to have when I'm collecting sports cards. The first guest that we're going to get to today is indeed Paul Hickey and Connor Barnett. Now, I have a feeling these guys aren't going to share the same sentiment that I just shared, but let's find out. Here's a clip from a few weeks ago on their Sports Card Strategy show.
Kind of a big announcement in my life. Many of you know that for the past several years, like all of us have, I've had alternate supporting income streams other than flipping sports cards and running nooffseason.com. Well, 2024 is going to be the year where I am going to focus on one income stream in terms of the hobby. The hobby will be my income stream in 2024. It's going to be nothing other than running nooffseason.com with you and the rest of the team and flipping sports cards. I'm not the type of person to put out a YouTube video that says with some cheesy thumbnail, I quit my job and I'm flipping sports cards and all that stuff. But essentially, that's what we're doing over here. So I'm excited. So my main goal is make that work with all of you. All of you in the audience are going to be a big part of that. So I appreciate you. In terms of how that's going to work flipping, I am going to be laser focused on taking guidelines, turning them into strategies, and executing plays like a stone cold sniper assassin, my friend. Those are my goals for 2024. What do you got, brother?
I absolutely love it, Paul. I'm excited to kind of get your full attention as we continue to build and provide more and more value for everyone that listens to our content. Super excited for 2024. Good goals there. I've got a couple goals, some wide, some narrow. Starting things off, going to kind of reiterate some of the stuff we discussed yesterday on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Developing a narrow focus area. So talked about it yesterday. I'm looking to focus on timing the market properly to create efficiency in my sports card strategy, really remove any speculation and ultimately risk and save myself time. I think this is one of the easiest ways that you can make profits, simply timing the market, buying the right card of the right player at the right time, knowing when my sell marker is and using cyclicality and seasonality as my sell markers there. Another thing, I'm very fortunate to enter the hobby with easy access to knowledge and great support from you, Paul, the rest of our No Off Season family, coworkers, and things like that. So for me, my goal is to 5x initial cash flow. I'm starting the year off with roughly $1,000 looking to put into cards. I want to end with $5K for the year, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on if that is an attainable goal for someone that's new to the hobby. Obviously, this will be my first year really locking in on things. I'm curious if you think that this is this a doable number, Paul? 5K, 5X.
Chad coming in strong and going, I think you're going to do this in 3 months, Connor. Step it up, baby.
Absolutely love it. Good morning, Chad. And then rounding off my goals real quick, this one's kind of like an overarching theme. So for me, I want to create a clean process within my sports card strategy that becomes repeatable. For me, I want to be able to repeat processes. We talked yesterday a lot, Paul, about repeating profits from the same players, making recurring profits. I essentially want my strategy to kind of fall under that same umbrella. So strictly following guidelines to build strategies and execute plays. I want to find what works for me, and I want to be able to repeat. Obviously, the market's going to shift from year to year, but I think overall we can find guidelines that are repeatable year after year. Really, I want to use as little energy as possible to hit my profit goals. I want to put a ton of time into this business with you, Paul, and a lot of my energy is going to go there. I love playing golf. I got a lot of things I like to do outside of sports cards. So here, I want to hit my goals in the most efficient way possible. I'm looking forward to diving deeper into my strategy with you all as 2024 moves along and sharing with audience both my struggles and my successes.
Right on, brother. Love it.
Right on, brother, indeed. Well, certainly not the type of content that I am producing, but it's kind of fun to hear you guys chat about doing what you do. I mean, I understood everything you said, but I certainly couldn't come up with a repeatable, organized process to make money flipping cards and It's not what I want to do, but I respect that you're capable of doing that. And Paul, congratulations on making this a career choice for yourself. It's a pretty big step to not focus on any other job, focus on your content creation, and focus on flipping cards to pay your bills. So that's pretty serious, man. And for Connor, I mean, I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say I think 5xing your money is a pretty aggressive goal. I don't play in the same sandbox that you do. I spend money and have piles of cards that collect dust. So by no means am I suitable to be making this critique, but I'd be interested in seeing the data if just as an analyst or a third-party auditor. In terms of my own personal next New Year's resolution, I've got some goals for the podcast here. Now, I don't treat this as a business. I'm not making any money doing this podcast. I don't have sponsors or advertisements, and I don't even make money in the hobby. So for the podcast, I don't care about traditional numbers because I don't get paid. To me, it's all about the engagement and community fulfillment. So my goal is to increase the engagement and enjoyment of all the stuff I put out into the world. So that would mean more comments and interactions on my Instagram stories and posts and my Facebook posts in the Golf Cards and Memorabilia group, more one-on-one conversations with my hobby friends about content published on my podcast and posts on my socials, and more guests and featured hobbyists on my podcast featuring empowering, inspiring, and heartfelt collector stories. And hopefully fewer solo episodes aside from where it makes sense. I would also like, on the podcast spectrum of my resolutions, to be a guest on others' shows. Maybe once a month to get outside of my bubble and get exposure to the hobby experience that other people are cultivating. And that's one of the reasons why most of the guests on today's episode identify as investor flipper type people, because I want to not only deal with like-minded people, but also deal with opposite-minded people so that I can learn and grow. Anyways, the next guest is somebody who I have the utmost respect for. This is Iowa Dave, who has a podcast called The Shallow End, in which he talks about collecting cards that are not necessarily the most expensive, but the ones that he gravitates the most towards. I really like Iowa Dave's episode about the 6 questions to ask yourself before purchasing a card. Some of the ones that really stood out to me were, do I just want to own this card, or do I actually like to look at it? Because when I look at these piles of cards on my desk, it's the ones that I just absolutely love looking at the reflection in the light, and I love flipping, as I'm flipping through my box, that's the one I pull out. And it might not be the most expensive card, but that's the card that I should be collecting. Another question that Iowa Dave asks himself before buying a card is, then what? Is it just going to collect dust on a shelf? Is it something you want to display? Is it something you plan on flipping and selling like Connor and Paul? It doesn't really matter what the and then what is, but it's important for you to ask yourself so that you know what you will actually do with this card and you're not just making an impulsive decision. Anyways, check out Iowa Dave's podcast, The Shallow End, because he's got more than just those 2 questions. There's 4 more plus dozens of other great episodes. Anyways, let's find out what Dave's New Year's resolutions are for 2024.
What's up, No Off Season Nation? This is Dave Schwartz, Iowa Dave Sports Cards on Instagram, and these are my sports card goals for 2024. Number 1, I want to make it to the National or else some other major show. I went to my first National last year in Chicago. It was tremendous. It was the best experience I had in the sports card industry all year. This year it's in Cleveland, and I'm trying to talk my wife into going. She's a huge music fan. That's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. I thought we could make a day of that. Later on, I could go do some cards. She could do her thing. I thought that would be fun. So that's number one. But if we can't make it there, then I'd like to make it to Dallas, like to make it to Indy for the Midwest Monster. But there needs to be some major show on my docket for 2024. Number two is I want to acquire one of these three Albert Pujols cards. Either his 2001 SP Authentic out of 1250 rookie card, which I think is his best looking rookie card. His 2004 Topps Chrome Red X-Fractor. It's not numbered, but less than 70 copies were made, and it's just a beautiful card. And then the other one is this 2011 Topps Finest Red Refractor out of 25. I used to not be a color match person, but the more I get involved in this as a hobby, and the more that I start collecting St. Louis Cardinals, like Pujols, Molina, Stan Musial, those types of players, I really have come to appreciate the red on red. Okay, number three. I'm going to try to think about sports cards less. And I know that sounds weird, but I was really consumed a lot of time just thinking about cards, even when I didn't have them in front of me, when I wasn't working on my podcast, The Shallow End. It was just always on my brain. And sometimes even when I was at work, I found myself thinking about cards, and that was just a little bit too much. So I think I would like to be able to compartmentalize a little bit more in 24 and be a little bit more present, if you will. And definitely, I love sports cards. I want to keep thinking about it and doing it and collecting them and talking about them. But, maybe 30% less would be healthy. And then lastly is I want to get better at video production and video editing. So I worked on the audio side of things a lot last year, and I would like to just be a little bit better in how I present myself on camera this year. It's never been my favorite medium, but I think for me to have a better experience and to really just enjoy this space a little bit more, I think that video is the logical next step. So those are the four things. Thanks so much. Happy 2024.
Heck yeah, Dave. It takes some guts to admit that you think and spend too much time on the hobby. And I think we're all with you. I mean, those of us who are diehard sports cards fans have a hard time not opening up eBay every time you pick up your phone to look at the time, or not checking out your watch list and staring at the card that you really want to bid on for the 20th time in 2 days, knowing, well, just set yourself a timer for a week from now and, take a look at it as it approaches the end of the auction. These sorts of things, if we allowed ourselves some more self-control, some more discipline, those moments that we do spend in the hobby could actually be filled with enjoyment and intent towards doing what we're doing. The other thing I really love that you said was leaning into the color match scheme. I can totally vibe with that. Steve Nash, for instance, I really like his purple parallels for his son's jerseys, or his orange parallels if he's wearing the orange jersey, although I don't like those as much. Or the gold or yellow parallels for when he played on the Lakers. And I'm sure those of you who are listening, I encourage you to go check out parallels for your favorite players that have jersey matched colors. And those will bring you more satisfaction than going for lower serial numbered parallels simply for the rarity. Go after that color match. So that brings me to my next New Year's resolution, which is to collect my own way, to use my PC to express myself and what I love. And that's all that matters. And it doesn't mean anything else to anyone else. And part of that is to not be jealous of others. It's easy to see these amazing cards on social media posts that I could never afford or could never find out in the wild. And that's okay. They can enjoy those rare cards, and I don't have to be envious of that. Or similarly, if I see somebody complete a project, they might not be rare cards, but it might be hard to collect them all in that sequence. At the end of the day, if it were a project that I had thought of, then I would have done it. I've done that exact thing for the Cosmic Parallels, and I'm trying to get them all in PSA 10 now. I've collected all of the 2021 Upper Deck Artifacts Golf Diamond Relics. I have my own specific projects, and that's okay that others can have their specific projects. I can be selfish about what I enjoy while still cheering on what others have going on. All right, next up we have Ryan Painter from the Sports Card Strategy Show, an episode about a week ago. And here's what his New Year's resolution is.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Ryan Painter, and I'm here to share with you my 2024 goals. Boom, let's go. Number one, okay, I want to separate this year. I'm finally going to separate my hobby expenses and my personal expenses. My wife's like, hey, you making money at this? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, can you show me? I'm like, no. Everything's been way too messed up. So heading to the bank in the morning, separating these things. I'm going to get my own credit card for this thing. And I very well might do that whole kind of like become, official with the state and kind of open up a business in that way just to be able to get some discounts. I'm not sure about that one, but I definitely want to separate those two things and be able to do way better bookkeeping. My bookkeeping's been garbage up to this point. There you go. Number two, I want to rebrand. Okay, so I'm a minister, right? And it's a little bit weird. Like, I'm just on Facebook and I've got tons of card friends and I got all my people from my congregation and this and that and people I'm like reaching out to. And it's a little weird when I post something and then, somebody from the card world starts dropping F-bombs. I'm fine with it, but it's kind of a weird look. So I'm going to rebrand here, create a new kind of social media, if you will, my eBay store, and get it all under the name Clean and Centered. Now check this out, huh? How do you want your cards, especially if you're going to grade them? You want them clean, and you want those puppies centered. And as a minister, what am I preaching about? I want people's lives to be clean, and I want them to be centered. I hope that wasn't too preachy. Let me know in the comments if that came across a little too self-righteous. That's not the goal, but I thought that was kind of a cool little mix. So, clean and centered coming to you. I've got my eBay is under a different name. I run a break group, and all right, little promo here, called Holy City Sports Cards with my friend David. That name will probably stay the same since it's kind of a partnership, but there you go. Check out my breaks if you want to. We just do it's usually like one football hobby box a night. That's basically, it's kind of a small group, but a lot of fun. Okay, next, let's get to my actual financial goals and my game plan. So here we go. You ready? On my eBay, I currently have, I want to say 657 different cards listed. I probably have another 500 that I need to list. So I do lots and lots of little sales, and I want to get out of that this year. It just takes a lot of time. I actually enjoy it, but it takes a lot of time, and I want to get into some bigger plays here. So, for instance, let me just kind of show this to you here. Like, here is these are just my football cards, and it's not even all of them that are on eBay. I'm just loaded with all these kind of cheapies and stuff. And so I want to systematically go through these in the next few months and get rid of them. I got a couple cheap Brandon Ayuks. Let's just put those together, put them in an auction, move them, and so I want to take that money in January through April, and I want to invest it into Bowman Chrome University. I'm just a football guy, so I'm just going to stick with the football, even those baseball plays by lefty seem like gold. I'm going to stick with the play here. And Paul's actually been talking a lot about this stuff. He actually just mentioned Malik Neighbors today or yesterday, whenever it was. I feel smart, like I'm a little ahead of the curve. I already bought this one. This is an auto at a 150. I'm more of a Panini guy, so I don't know all this refractor name. Pink Diamond, I think, Fuchsia Diamond, whatever. But $70 card, which for me that's kind of big. Anyway, and so I'm going to be accumulating as I get this money more and more Bowman, right? And we're going to end those things on draft night, or if it's a day two guy, I'll end it on day two type thing, some running backs and things like that. I got a Trey Benson auto on the way, things like that. Okay, so we're going to take that money, we're going to put it in Bowman U, and then we're going to see what we get at the end of April during the draft. Hopefully there'll be some profit in there, and then we're going to turn that. We're going to go right into buying up on the cheap. I want to get into Burrow. I want to get into Trevor Lawrence. That kind of May through June is glorious time to be able to get into those. And then I want to get out of them in, late August, maybe September, spike games, get out of those. And then when I sell those, I want to take that money and I want to play the day trader game this season, which is basically you find the fantasy guy who's not off to a good start and invest on the cheap, wait for the big spike game. Amari Cooper goes off for 265 yards. Thank you, Amari. And boom, sell. And so that's kind of does that make sense? A little 3-phase. We're going to go into Bowman, and then we're going to go into kind of the off season, and there is no off season. And then during the season, play more of the day trader or buy low and try to quickly flip on the high, and we'll see where that goes. Wish me luck. You guys rock. Happy 2024.
If you're taking a
Heck yeah, Ryan. Your energy is off the charts. I definitely have a more smooth approach to how I want to host this on the hobby, but your energy, man, gets me hyped up. You mentioned wanting to rebrand and kind of separate some of the inappropriate behavior that could happen in the hobby from perhaps the rest of your life. And I can certainly see that as a minister. And I can relate to it with my podcast's name. It has the word fondle in it, which when I first released this podcast raised some eyebrows from my friends and family. But everybody gets used to my name, whereas dropping F-bombs is not necessarily that cool in the church circles. So good luck to you, my man. I'm going to share my next New Year's resolution, which is to attempt to implement what I call a 1-for-1 collector strategy. And I said 1-for-1, not 1-of-1. Now, this is something that I don't know if I can truly follow through with, but I'm going to throw it out there into the universe, and if something can manifest from this, then so be it. So the 1-for-1 strategy is whenever I want to get a new card, I need to do a 1-for-1 replacement in my collection, which means selling one of my old cards. It's been hard for me to convince myself to do this because in the minimal time I have to spend in the hobby, I enjoy flipping through my cards, talking with the community and my golf card group, golf cards and memorabilia, and all those I'm connected with on Instagram. And it's hard to push myself to put in some work and think critically about what I'm willing to part with because I love most of my cards. And I consider this hobby to be an escape from reality. I consider this to be fun, and deciding to get rid of something isn't all that fun. The way that I can maybe make it fun is to remind myself that I've been a bit dumb and a bit careless with purchases, and that if I do put in some work and get rid of some cards, even some of the ones that I like, my collecting experience could be more enjoyable, and I could build a collection that I absolutely love as opposed to just like. Anyways, I'm actually going to pass it back off to Paul because he brought up something interesting in one of his recent episodes that I'd like to share today.
Go ahead. Let's do it, Connor.
Let's start off with George Shear. Good afternoon. Question, getting back into collecting. How do you guys organize your cards? Do you do it by teams? Do you do it alphabetically? Separate rookies to commons, things like that? Give the breakdown here, Paul, and where they should go to get more information.
George, thanks for being part of the nooffseason.com fam. Great question. You probably have gathered by now that we're all about helping you make money flipping sports cards. And so I would say for 99% of our audience and 100% of me and 100% of Connor, Chad, and Lefty, we are organizing our cards first based on value. So we will go player, and we will go look up the comps, and we will organize the cards based on the value. And then we will cross-reference that with a selling marker. So we will literally organize our cards, whether it's a organization physically in boxes or whether it's an organization in a virtual spreadsheet, which we do a lot of. We will organize them by what selling marker is coming up first, who are we going to list for sale first, what's going to be the value of that card, and then from there, probably organize them by player. So that is going to be the most efficient for us. However, if you're a PCer, meaning personal collector, if these are just cards that you don't have any intention of selling at any particular marker or any particular time, you might sell it as a collection at some point or as a set at some point, I would go by set. So I would go by basically like a year, make, and model, baby, and build the set. I think that's fun. I think that's what a lot of collectors do. And then, or the alternative to that would be by player, keeping all your players in one box and then organizing that particular player by, the year, make, and model from there. Other people do it by grade. I think one of the reasons we don't talk about the reasons why PSA is probably the top grading company on the secondary market. And I've heard a lot of people say it's because of their set registry. So people like to collect full sets in PSA slabs, regardless of the grade. And so that is one reason why PSA slabs outsell a lot of others on the secondary market. Some people organize by slab. So it's really whatever you're most excited about, George. And I know another thing, if our guy Mike LaCusta or Iowa Dave, golf card collector, Fondling Cardboard, Iowa Dave Sports Cards, if they were on this show, they might say, hey, we reorganize all the time because we love to look at our cards. We like to have them in our hands and look at them. So I know a lot of collectors that will just reorganize how they've tracked and organized their cards just for the fun of being able to get the cards out and enjoy them, touch them, look at them, etc. So, George, great question. Hopefully this helps.
Absolutely, Paul. You are correct. I am constantly reorganizing my piles of cards. I sometimes will pull up a pile of all the same player if they're playing hot. And sometimes I might tell myself, I'm going to pull all my cards together of Tony Finau. And if he wins 2 or 3 tournaments in a row like he did a year or two ago, then, it might be time to sell them. But that strategic part of my mind can never actually convince my body to do that. And I want to keep all of my Tony Finau cards while he's playing well. And instead, it becomes like my organization of gems to admire for that particular player. Sometimes I just want to enjoy flipping through my cards from particular eras. So I might organize them from dates, like here's my 90s cards, here's my 2000s cards, here's my 2021 cards, because that was a really exciting year for me. And I might have all of my cards that are from around my childhood era, and I just want to flip through them. And it could be a box full of cards worth a couple dollars and some cards worth a couple $1,000. And the only thing that ties them together is my own personal childhood. And other times, this is my favorite, I like to do something called a favorite box. And it's where I put all of my shiniest, newest cards that I just like to look at. And some of my absolute personal favorite cards that I will just always leave in there. And that's, the box that I pull out if I ever have family or friends visiting who ask me about sports cards. And then I say, 1 minute, put my finger up in the air, run down into my basement, grab my favorite box, and then I'm doing a bit of show and tell. So there's a lot of ways you can organize your cards, but of course I'm going to be the guy saying, don't forget to fondle your cardboard. And that leads perfectly into my next New Year's resolution, which is to get organized with collecting. As much as I love fondling my cardboard, I do stockpile too many cards. Paul calls it hoarding. And he had a cool interview with Gary Vee, actually, where he asked Gary Vee about hoarding. Gary leaned actually a little bit towards my side, but you can reach a point where you have too many piles of cards if you forget when you have really nice cards that you were excited to have 6 months ago and you completely forget about it. So that's the kind of thing that I want to avoid. because every card I've bought has had utility value to me. The fulfillment of working towards a project, whether it's completing a set, collecting a player, or just dabbling into something new and exciting that captivated my attention at some point. And some of those projects are complete, and I want to hold on to them forever. Some are left unfinished because my interest waned, or some cards have simply lost their luster for me. And whatever the reason, one of my goals is to reset the baselines for all of my projects and all of my hobby activity that I'm working on, and to sell or trade the cards that have used up their utility value to me. Owning those cards has kind of lost its luster for me. To get rid of cards that don't have purpose in my collection anymore. Basically, to get organized. Our next guest is Mosaic Joe, so let's find out his New Year's resolutions.
Hey everyone, Mosaic Joe here, also known as Farmer Joe. For those who have ever wondered, I'm an organic mushroom farmer. I grow shiitake and oyster mushroom on hardwood logs in the mountains of North Georgia. So that is my main job, but I would love for sports cards to be a bigger part of my income. And one way I've been doing that is through consigning, but I've also amassed quite the inventory of my own. And one of my main goals for 2024 is to reduce the size of my own inventory, especially the low end. And by low end, I'm thinking anything under $50, and I've got quite a bit of that. So hopefully at the Culture Collision Trade Show, I'm able to reduce that. I'm going to be offering some pretty big deals on cards. So if you guys are at the show, come by, say hi. I'm going to be motivated to sell those. Anything under $50, it's, yeah, you shoot me an offer, I probably say yeah. So the other thing that I want to do this year is I want to be a better contributor to this show. This show has been a great platform for many of us to really show what we're doing in the hobby and just to gain insight from each other and to learn about the intricacies of certain sets. And, you know, there's always the ability to learn within this community. And the more of us that contribute to shows like this, the more knowledge that's shared within the community. So I would love to be able to share my knowledge of especially football cards with everyone that watches and takes this content in. So those are my resolutions for this year. Again, I hope everyone had a happy new year, and here's to 2024.
Joe, sounds like you know what you want to do. And if you aren't getting any value and any enjoyment out of those smaller cards, then by all means, offload them. As I mentioned, I'll probably be offloading some of my own in my 1-for-1 policy. But if I were to shift your mindset at all, I would say this year try to treat the hobby as an escape rather than something that brings more stress to your life. I want to enjoy the parts of the hobby that I like and outsource the parts that I don't. That may mean I need to send a bunch of cards to consignment rather than listing them myself. And the consignment will take a fee, and that's worth getting some of my time back. And more importantly, I'm going to say this, I guess, as a formal New Year's resolution. I need to manage my spending habits. I need to buy what I love, make lists, prioritize. Don't just buy for the sake of satisfying my buying impulse. One purchasing impulse that I made earlier this week was I purchased a 1902 Ogden's Limited Tabs Harry Vardon. This is a 122-year-old piece of cardboard. It's graded as a PSA 2. The card looks pretty good. The image itself is fantastic. The border of the card is showing some roughness, but it is what it is. This is a card that was pulled out of a tobacco pack, probably a pack of cigarettes, 122 years ago. On the back of it, it says, Harry Vardon, H. Vardon, the most famous golfer of the day, professional champion, but owing to his being on a tour in America, did not compete for championship last year. So this must have been from a pack of cigarettes in Europe. This was a card that I made an offer on a Facebook post by our very own Derek Fimmen on the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. Now, this was an impulse buy. I was not on the lookout for any 1902 Ogden's cards, nonetheless, Harry Vardon, and it wasn't really on my hit list at all. But it really caught my eye. Derek was willing to let it go for a very reasonable price. And it goes into my final New Year's resolution, which is to network and connect with hobbyists of all shapes and sizes. So Derek's somebody I already knew in the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group, but I've connected with him in a new way. We did a direct deal instead of feeding third-party platforms. And other ways that I plan on networking connecting this year is to keep tabs on Grail cards, where they are, who owns it, build rapport with that owner. In case they ever decide to get rid of that card, I want to be the first person they think of. And I do have a specific card in mind. I will not be sharing what it is so that you don't go on a rat chase to try and find it. I'd also like to collaborate with hobbyists that have opposing views just as much as my like-minded collectors to create conversations from all angles rather than just shouting into echo chambers. And today is a fine example of that. I've opened the door for some investors to share some of their thoughts, and I appreciate that. Another good example, as I've already mentioned, was the Collector versus Investor series that was just recently concluded. We did a 4-part series with Paul Hicks, as well as a few other of my collector friends. We are going overtime today, so I'm going to do a quick card of the week, and then we will wrap it up. So the card of the week is 2016 Goodwin Champions Daniel Berger rookie autograph card in a PSA 10 grade. Now, I've talked about this card on past episodes. The reason it's the card of the week today is that I bought this card with a bit of a flipper mindset last year, thinking Daniel Berger's injured, I can buy his rookie autograph cheap. He doesn't have any other cards, so this is the only rookie autograph. There's a Gaudy version as well as the base Goodwin in a PSA 10 condition. Well, I actually bought it raw and graded it PSA 10. And I haven't been happy with the card, to be frank. So to open the kimono, I own 3 copies of this card. I will probably be selling 1 or 2 of them soon. Daniel Berger did make his return on tour last weekend and had a pretty good showing. He was in the mix for the first couple days. I think he came top, I don't think it was top 20, but he came top 30. And Daniel Berger's back. So if you're on the market for a Daniel Berger rookie autograph card, hit me up. And that wraps it up for today. So all I ask of you this week is to just share this episode with a friend. Send the link, tell somebody about the Fondling Cardboard Podcast, tell them it's a good listen, and let's grow our community of collectors. I am Mike Lacusta at The Golf Card Collector on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.